The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan podcast by night, all day.
And has nothing against him. But I remember, and I think in my mind is undeniably the GOAT, as again, a just above casual fan, John Jones.
John Jones is the GOAT.
He's the GOAT.
Now it's undeniable.
It's undeniable.
There was all this debate until he submitted Cyril Gane and became the heavyweight champion. No one can fuck with that.
Smashed him, bro.
Smashed him.
Cyril looked kind of unbeatable up until the Francis fight.
Well, the Francis fight exposed one aspect of his game that you're never going to beat John in, and that's the wrestling.
Yeah.
And then everybody said, well, he didn't know that Francis was going to wrestle him. Given. Francis is not the caliber of wrestler or even in the realm of John Jones.
No doubt.
John Jones has been wrestling since he was 12 years old. He took down Daniel Cormier, who's an Olympic-level wrestler.
Yep.
There is not a guy in the world that can say that you could start wrestling at 29 years old. I mean, you'd have to be the freakiest of freak athletes to be able to compete with that guy to start wrestling when Cyril Gane started wrestling.
Right.
The gap is just too wide to cross.
Right. So I think what I was thinking is, and when I bring up John Jones, is I remember the first John Jones fight I watched was when he got DQ'd against Matt Hamill.
Okay.
From the 12-6 elbows.
Yeah.
Right? That was my first experience with him. The next thing I feel like I remember, and I may have seen some of his fights in between then, but is when he like beat up this guy that was like trying to rob this lady like the night of a fight.
That was the day he fought for the title.
Right.
The day he fought for the title, he chased down a guy who robbed someone and tackled him and held him until the cops came.
Right.
And then,
went
and fought Shogun and became the youngest ever UFC champion.
Yep. So here's what I'm getting at is and this is going to be just kind of, I'm interested in your take on this because I watched it happen with John Jones and I feel like I watched it happen with Kamaru as well, where it was like John and Kamaru as they came up, right? It's like John does this thing where he stops this robber and he wins the belt. He beats Shogun, who is this kind of like, him and Lyoto were these kind of like unfigure-outable guys to me as a fan at that time, right? Like guys like, how do you beat Lyoto Machida? You can't, because you can't even touch the guy, right, at that time. And they were like inherently these like good guys that everybody was rooting for. Mm-hmm. And then both of them became these like epically long-range champions that then became sort of like villains.
Kamaru was never a villain.
I feel like he is.
Really?
To
How
me
so?
as a fan, again, who doesn't know anything, and maybe it's it comes back to maybe the celebrity like ego thing, like to the camera as a fan. Again, I've never met the guy. He's probably great. But just as a casual watcher, I went from going, I'm rooting for this guy, to then it be like the way he talks about himself. And I feel like John Jones was the same way to me, is they became this like really like, and then John got in all this kind of like turmoil-y stuff. Like,
well, I don't think you can compare the two. And here's two reasons why. One, have you ever seen Kamaru talk? Like, you ever seen Kamaru on my podcast? Mm-mm. He's one of the nicest, most down-to-earth, friendly, smiley, fun guys. What you're seeing is Kamaru, the destroyer.
The dog, dude.
The dog is ready to go to war.
100%.
That's the difference. And
that's what I was trying to ask.
He's
like
signaling to all the other people, I'm going to smash you.
Right.
And that's what he's signaling.
Yeah. And that's what I think I was asking is like, is that all just perceived by me? Or is that...
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's part of the fun of being a fan.
Sure.
Deciding what you like and what you don't like, and personalities that you root for and personalities you root against. And sometimes you root against a guy and he wins you over because he's so goddamn good. You're like, I wanted that motherfucker to lose, but he's the fucking greatest.
Yeah.
John is very different than Kamaru. John is what I would describe there's human beings that have different temperament and different minds and different mentality and a ruthless competitive drive that's almost terrifying to the ordinary person. That's John Jones. John Jones is a bad guy who's trying to be a good guy. Right. But that guy, if we were living 1,000 years ago, he would be on a horse with the biggest battle axe, waiting in the back, hacking heads off, and everybody would be running. And
Right.
those people have always existed.
Right.
These dominators have always existed.